Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that your world has shrunk, not physically, but emotionally and mentally. The colors have faded into a relentless gray, and every thought seems to spiral into a labyrinth of doubt, regret, and loneliness. This is Elias's reality, a 72-year-old man caught in a prison of his own making. He is surrounded by silence, save for the echoes of past betrayals and the relentless drone of negative news that seeps into his bones. The room feels colder, not because of the weather, but because of the heavy weight of unspoken sorrows and unfulfilled dreams. Elias's mind is a battlefield where overthinking reigns supreme. Every decision he once made is dissected and judged by the relentless critic within, amplifying every mistake into a towering mountain of guilt. The faces of old friends blur into memories he yearns to revive, yet his feet remain glued to the same worn path of inertia. It's too late, he tells himself, as if the clock's ticking hand has the final say over his desires. I don't have the energy becomes a mantra, a shield against the vulnerability of change. And then, the quiet terror of social rejection whispers, they will think I'm a bore. These excuses form the bars of his gray prison, locking him away from the life he once imagined. Each day, Elias battles the paradox of wanting connection but fearing exposure. His loneliness is compounded by the toxic companionship of his compulsive consumption of bad news, headlines that feed his sense of despair and helplessness. This addiction to negativity becomes a vicious cycle, reinforcing his belief that the world is a hostile place and he is powerless within it. He yearns to paint again, to feel the brush glide across the canvas, to lose himself in colors and shapes. Yet, the excuses pile up like an insurmountable wall, and the paintbrush remains untouched. Travel plans, phone calls to old friends, even the idea of joining a community group, each opportunity is met with the same internal resistance, the same litany of why bother and what if. But what is this gray prison really made of? It is not only the fear of aging or the physical limitations that come with it. It is the deeper, more insidious paralysis of the soul, a dance between the desire for freedom and the comfort of familiar suffering. Elias's mind is caught in a loop where every thought breeds another, an endless echo chamber of what-ifs and should-have-beens. Overthinking becomes a form of self-torture, where analysis replaces action and reflection becomes rumination. The past is a ghost that haunts every waking moment, while the future seems like an unreachable horizon. This paralysis is not unique to Elias. It is a silent epidemic among many who find themselves in the twilight years, wrestling with the shadows of their life's journey. The excuses he makes are not mere laziness or defeat. They are protective rituals crafted by a fragile ego desperate to avoid pain, rejection, and failure. They serve as a veil, concealing vulnerability under layers of rationalization. The mind, in its infinite complexity, creates these narratives to shield itself from the chaos of uncertainty and the rawness of unmet needs. Imagine the weight of carrying years of unresolved grief, the sting of past betrayals, and the bitterness of perceived manipulation by life itself. Elias's heart is a battlefield of conflicting emotions, love and loss, hope and despair, courage and fear. Yet trapped in this internal war, he feels invisible, not because others neglect him, but because he has withdrawn from himself. The disconnect between his inner world and the external reality deepens the chasm of solitude. This struggle raises profound questions. How does one break free from the mental paralysis that binds the soul? What lies beyond the excuses and the overthinking? Can the gray walls be dismantled from within? Or must there be an external force to ignite change? Elias's story is a mirror reflecting the universal human experience of wrestling with the self in the face of aging, loss, and the search for meaning. As the days blend into one another, a subtle tension builds beneath the surface, a quiet yearning for transformation. But the path forward is obscured by fear and doubt, a dense fog that clouds the vision of possibility. The next step is uncertain, yet imperative. How will Elias confront the shadows within and reclaim the vibrant life that his heart still desires? This question lingers, setting the stage for a journey into the depths of the psyche. A journey where Elias will encounter his own shadow, the hidden parts of the self that have long been denied, feared, or suppressed. It is within this confrontation that the first cracks will appear in the gray prison and the faint light of hope will begin to filter through. Prepare to accompany Elias as he embarks on this profound exploration, a passage from paralysis to awakening, from excuses to empowerment. His story is a testament to the possibility that even in the later chapters of life, renewal and freedom are not only possible, but waiting to be embraced. If this story resonates with you, if you feel the stirrings of your own gray prison, join us on this path of discovery. Subscribe and like to journey deeper into the mind's hidden corridors where true liberation begins. Imagine Elias stepping into a room filled with strangers, yet sensing a strange familiarity, a sanctuary where the muted colors of his inner world might find new hues. This gathering is unlike any he has known. A group of seniors, each carrying their own invisible burdens, all drawn together by a shared quest to understand the shadows lurking within. Here, Elias encounters the concept that will challenge everything he thought about himself: his shadow. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist whose ideas have shaped generations, spoke of the shadow as the hidden, darker side of the human psyche. The parts of ourselves we deny, repress, or fear to acknowledge. For Elias, the shadow is not a distant myth but a living presence, woven into the fabric of his overthinking, his excuses, and his silent suffering. It is the voice in his mind that whispers, "You are too old. You don't deserve happiness. You will only be rejected." These thoughts are not random but deeply embedded shadows formed by years of pain, regret, and self-doubt. In the dim light of the reflection group's circle, Elias meets a wise facilitator who gently invites him to peer beyond the veil of his conscious mind. He learns that confronting the shadow is not about condemnation, but about understanding and integration. It's about recognizing that those excuses, "It's too late. I'm not interesting anymore. Nobody cares," are masks worn by fragile parts of himself seeking protection. This fragile ego, wounded by loneliness and betrayal, has built walls that imprison him, yet it also yearns to break free. The facilitator introduces Elias to the concept of internal archetypes, universal symbols residing within our unconscious minds that shape behavior and identity. Elias identifies two that resonate profoundly: the old skeptic, a cautious, critical voice constantly doubting his worth and capacity for change, and the wounded child, the tender, vulnerable part still aching from past betrayals and losses. These archetypes are not enemies, but facets of his psyche, begging for acknowledgement and compassion. Through guided exercises of imagination and dialogue, Elias begins to engage with these internal figures. In moments of quiet reflection, he visualizes conversations with the old skeptic, challenging its grim narratives, and embraces the wounded child, offering comfort where there was once only neglect. This process, known as active imagination, becomes a powerful tool for Elias, a way to dissolve the internal barriers that have long held him captive. As he confronts these shadows, Elias recognizes a pattern of self-sabotage rooted in fear. His excuses serve as shields against the vulnerability of stepping into the unknown. To admit desire, to reconnect, to create, to explore, also means risking rejection, failure, or disappointment. But in this new light, Elias sees that the greater risk lies in remaining imprisoned within his own mind, trapped by silence and isolation. The group supports him in small but profound acts of courage: a phone call to a distant son, an invitation extended to an old friend, a brush dipped hesitantly into paint. Each step, though fraught with doubt, chips away at the gray walls surrounding his soul. The addiction to negativity, once a dark cloud, begins to lift as Elias cultivates discipline to seek beauty and meaning, transforming passive consumption into active creation. This journey into the shadow is neither swift nor easy. It unveils raw wounds and hidden fears, forcing Elias to embrace parts of himself he had long denied. Yet, it is in this embrace that he discovers a paradoxical freedom. The freedom that comes from acceptance, not denial, from integration, not fragmentation. The shadow, once a source of paralysis, becomes a doorway to authentic living. Elias's story is a mirror for many who wrestle with the unseen saboteurs within, the silent voices that feed on doubt and fear. It reveals that true transformation requires more than willpower. It demands courage to face the darkness within and compassion to heal it. As Elias learns to converse with his shadow, he steps toward reclaiming the vibrant life that lies beyond excuses and paralysis. But this is only the beginning. What new realities await Elias as he continues to dismantle the internal prison? How will these insights reshape his relationships, his sense of self, and his place in the world? The path ahead promises both challenge and renewal, a journey from shadow to light, from silent suffering to active engagement. As Elias prepares to take these next steps, he embodies a profound truth: that even in the later chapters of life, the courage to meet one's shadow can spark a renaissance of the soul. The next chapter will reveal how this confrontation leads to the unraveling of invisible chains, illuminating the path from mental paralysis to serene action. Join us as we delve deeper into Elias's transformation, where the hidden forces controlling his mind are exposed and the seeds of freedom begin to blossom. Imagine Elias sitting quietly in the circle of the reflection group, the room dimly lit, shadows flickering softly on the walls like the unspoken thoughts swirling in his mind. Here, surrounded by faces etched with their own stories of struggle and resilience, he confronts something he has long avoided: the truth of his inner world, the dance of archetypes that govern his thoughts and actions. This is not a mere intellectual exercise, but a profound journey into the depths of his psyche, where the old skeptic and the wounded child reside. Two internal figures locked in a silent battle that has kept Elias trapped in his gray prison. The old skeptic is a voice that has echoed through Elias's years, a cautious and critical presence that questions every impulse toward change. It whispers with a weathered tone, "You're too old to start anew. Why bother? You'll just fail again. People will reject you." This archetype embodies the hardened wisdom of age, but also the fear of vulnerability and the pain of past disappointments. It is not simply a negative force, but a guardian of the familiar, reluctant to surrender the safety of inertia for the uncertainty of growth. The old skeptic's voice is familiar, almost comforting in its predictability, yet it cages Elias in doubt and hesitation. Opposite this figure is the wounded child, a tender, fragile part of Elias's psyche that holds the raw pain of betrayals, losses, and unmet needs. This archetype is the silent weeper, the part that still aches from abandonment, loneliness, and the sting of being unseen. It clutches memories of youthful dreams crushed by reality and the quiet suffering that was never fully expressed. The wounded child is vulnerable, yearning for acceptance and love, yet often hidden beneath layers of defense mechanisms built over decades. It is this child who feels invisible, who cries out in silence when Elias's mind spirals into overthinking and self-reproach. As Elias learns from the wise facilitator, these archetypes are not enemies to be defeated, but facets of himself to be understood and embraced. The process of active imagination invites Elias to hold a dialogue with these internal figures, not to silence the old skeptic or dismiss the wounded child, but to listen deeply, acknowledge their fears, and negotiate a new relationship. In quiet moments, Elias visualizes the old skeptic sitting beside him, challenging its grim narratives with gentle questions. What if I am capable despite my age? Could failure be a step toward freedom rather than a sentence? With the wounded child, he offers warmth and compassion, imagining wrapping this fragile part of himself in a protective embrace, whispering words of reassurance that had long been denied. This inner dance reveals the roots of Elias's paralysis, the self-sabotage masked as excuses. It's too late. I have no energy. They will think I'm boring are not simply reasons, but shields forged by the old skeptic to protect the wounded child from potential pain. These excuses form a fragile fortress that keeps Elias safe from the harshness of rejection and the unknown risks of change. Yet, paradoxically, they also imprison him in a cycle of loneliness and regret, preventing the very healing and connection he yearns for. Elias begins to see that his overthinking is a symptom, not the cause, of his mental paralysis. It is the voice of the old skeptic spinning endless doubts to avoid facing the deeper wounds of the wounded child. This realization is both painful and liberating. It shines a light on the invisible chains binding him and offers a map to dismantle them. The group's support becomes crucial in this process, as Elias shares his fears and small victories, no longer isolated in his struggle. Encouraged, Elias takes tentative steps, calling a son he had distanced himself from, reaching out to an old friend, and even picking up a paintbrush after years of neglect. Each act is a rebellion against the old skeptic's decrees and a balm for the wounded child's longings. The addiction to negative news, which once fueled his despair, slowly gives way to a disciplined search for beauty and meaning. The colors on his canvas start to break the grayness that once suffocated his spirit. This journey into the interplay of inner archetypes is neither fast nor easy. It demands courage to face the shadows and patience to nurture fragile parts of the self. Yet it also reveals a profound paradox. True freedom arises not from eradicating fear, but from embracing it, not from denying pain, but from integrating it. Elias's story is a testament to the power of self-compassion and the transformative potential of dialogue within. As the shadows within begin to soften, Elias senses a shift, a subtle but undeniable movement toward wholeness. He is no longer a prisoner of his excuses, but a participant in the dance of his psyche, learning to lead with kindness and wisdom. The path ahead is still uncertain, but for the first time in many years, it feels open, inviting, alive. What new transformations await Elias as he continues to unravel the threads of his mental paralysis? How will this newfound dialogue with his inner archetypes reshape his relationships, his sense of purpose, and his connection to life itself? The next step beckons. A journey beyond the shadows, into the light of conscious action and serene empowerment. Join us as Elias steps further into this awakening, moving from silent suffering to active engagement, from the grip of excuses to the freedom of authentic living. The revelation that follows will illuminate how the invisible chains of the mind can be broken, and how the courage to confront one's inner world can spark a renaissance of the soul. Imagine Elias sitting quietly on a worn wooden chair, the dim light casting long shadows across the room where the reflection group meets. His hands tremble slightly as he holds his phone, the device feeling both alien and familiar, an instrument of connection and fear intertwined. For years, the calls he never made built invisible walls around him, each unanswered ring a brick in his gray prison. Yet today, something is different. Today, the whisper of the old skeptic, once so loud and relentless, has softened just enough for a sliver of courage to pierce the veil of doubt. This is the moment where transformation begins, not with grand gestures or miraculous insights, but with small acts of defiance against the mental chains forged by fear and habit. Elias knows that every excuse he has uttered, "I'm too tired. They won't want to hear from me. It's pointless," has been a shadow play, a mask worn by his fragile ego to stave off the vulnerability of rejection. But the paradox is clear. These very excuses have imprisoned him, stifling the spark of life that still flickers beneath years of silence and regret. In the gentle guidance of the group's facilitator, Elias practices what Jung called active imagination, a dialogue with his inner archetypes that reveals the rich, often painful landscape beneath his excuses. He imagines sitting beside the old skeptic, acknowledging its protective role but challenging its tyranny. "What if failure is not the end but a beginning?" he asks quietly. Across the room of his mind, the wounded child, shrouded in shadows, leans in, yearning for warmth and acceptance. Elias offers a tender embrace, whispering words long denied. "You are seen. You are worthy." These inner conversations are not mere fantasies, they are the scaffolding upon which Elias rebuilds his fractured self. The old skeptic, once a jailer, becomes a cautious ally, reminding him to proceed wisely, but not to retreat. The wounded child, once silent and unseen, finds a voice that sings not of despair, but hope. This integration, this meeting of fragmented selves, is the crucible where mental paralysis begins to dissolve. Armed with this newfound self-compassion, Elias embarks on a series of small, courageous acts that ripple outward like pebbles cast upon still water. He dials his son's number, heart pounding as the call connects. The conversation stumbles at first, awkward and hesitant, but each word spoken is a brick dismantled from the wall of isolation. He sends a message to an old friend, breaking years of silence, and receives a warm reply that kindles a flicker of joy. Tentatively, he picks up the neglected paintbrush, letting the colors spill onto the canvas, not as a demand for perfection, but as a celebration of presence. These actions, seemingly modest, carry profound symbolic weight. They are Elias's rebellion against the narrative spun by his fears, the story that it is too late to reconnect, too late to create, too late to live fully. Each step forward chips away at the grayness that once swallowed him whole, replacing it with hues of possibility and grace. The transformation is neither swift nor linear. There are moments when the old skeptic's voice resurfaces with renewed vigor, whispering doubts and fears that threaten to undo progress. Yet Elias has begun to recognize these as echoes of old wounds, not immutable truths. The support of the group, the anchor of shared experience, and the gentle discipline of seeking beauty in everyday moments fortify him against relapse into despair. Elias's journey illuminates a profound insight. Freedom from mental paralysis arises not from eradicating fear or silencing the inner critic, but from embracing these shadows with understanding and kindness. It is through this integration, this dance between courage and vulnerability, that authentic living emerges. The excuses that once held him captive are revealed as protective illusions, necessary once, but no longer serving his growth. As Elias's inner prison cracks, a new world comes into view, one where connection replaces isolation, creativity supplants stagnation, and the past is no longer a chain but a foundation. He begins to see that the true enemy was never time or age, but the stories he told himself about his limitations. By breaking these chains, Elias steps into a life marked by choice, presence, and renewal. Yet this is not the end of his journey. The path ahead beckons with challenges that test his newfound freedom and deepen his understanding of self. How will Elias sustain this fragile courage in the face of life's inevitable uncertainties? What new layers of his psyche will unfold as he continues to integrate the shadow? The next chapter will reveal how Elias transforms this awakening into serene action, moving from mere survival to vibrant engagement with the world. Join us as we follow Elias beyond the breaking of chains, into the realm where mental paralysis gives way to the quiet power of deliberate, authentic living, the place where freedom is not a distant dream, but a present reality waiting to be embraced. Imagine Elias seated at his modest easel, the vibrant hues of emerald greens and fiery reds beginning to burst forth on the once blank canvas before him. His hands, once trembling with hesitation, now move with a newfound certainty, a serene rhythm forged from a deep inner reconciliation. This scene is not a sudden miracle, but the culmination of a profound journey from mental paralysis to authentic liberation, a journey that redefines the twilight years not as a period of decline, but as a fertile ground for rebirth. Elias's story is not one of grand heroic feats, but of quiet revolutions within the soul. The excuses that once formed indelible chains, "It's too late," "I'm too tired," "They won't understand," have been dismantled, not by force, but through the gentle yet unyielding strength of self-awareness and compassion. He has come to understand that these excuses were not enemies but protectors, worn by a fragile ego wounded by loneliness, betrayal, and fear. And in embracing these wounded parts, he found the key to unlock the prison of his mind. This liberation began with the recognition that authenticity is not the absence of fear or imperfection, but the embrace of them. Elias learned that to live authentically meant to stand in the full light of his vulnerabilities, to voice the silent longings of his wounded child, and to temper the skeptical cautions of his old skeptic with kindness rather than dismissal. This delicate dance between acceptance and challenge transformed his internal landscape from a battleground of doubts into a sanctuary of integration. In this sanctuary, action no longer felt like a threat, but a natural extension of being. Elias's small acts, reaching out to an estranged son, reconnecting with old friends, picking up the paintbrush after decades, became profound declarations of freedom. Each step was a rebellion against the mental fog that had clouded his days, a testament to the power of choosing presence over paralysis. The familiar grayness that once suffocated his spirit gave way to a palette rich with possibility. And in this transformation, Elias discovered the essence of freedom, the ability to act serenely, fully aware of life's uncertainties, yet unshackled from the tyranny of fear. This rebirth through authenticity is not a destination, but a continuous unfolding. Elias's journey reveals a fundamental truth articulated by Carl Jung himself, that healing begins when the fragmented parts of the self are embraced rather than rejected. The shadow, once a source of dread and denial, becomes a wellspring of wisdom and vitality. The excuses, stripped of their protective guise, reveal the tender wounds beneath, inviting gentle tending and courageous growth. Elias's transformation also ripples outward, reshaping his relationships and his sense of belonging. The walls of isolation built from years of silence and mistrust crumble as he engages with others with renewed openness and empathy. The community he once feared judging him now becomes a source of support and shared humanity. His art, a language of the soul, speaks not only to himself, but to the world, bridging the inner and outer realms in a dance of creative expression and connection. Yet, the power of Elias's story lies not only in his personal triumph, but in its universal resonance. It challenges the pervasive narrative that aging is synonymous with decline and resignation. Instead, it illuminates the potential for profound growth, self-discovery, and freedom at any stage of life. In the quiet courage to confront one's shadows and to crush the excuses that bind, there lies a path to a life rich with meaning and serenity. As the brush glides over the canvas, Elias smiles, a smile not of fleeting pleasure but of deep, abiding peace. He is no longer a prisoner of his past regrets or a hostage to his fears. He is an active participant in his own life story, authoring new chapters filled with color, connection, and authenticity. His mental paralysis has given way to a serene action born from the heart's wisdom. This is the profound gift Elias offers to all who watch and listen, that it is never too late to reclaim your freedom, to dismantle the invisible prisons of the mind, and to live with authentic courage and grace. The journey may be fraught with shadows, but within them lies the light of rebirth. So, as you reflect on Elias's transformation, ask yourself, what excuses are you ready to shatter? What shadows are waiting to be embraced? And what vibrant new life awaits when you choose authenticity over paralysis? The canvas of your life is always waiting, ready for your brushstrokes of courage and truth. Will you paint your rebirth today?